What we'll be going over today, what you will be doing is you're going to have your phone, you're going to have a laptop, you're going to have a tablet, and you're going to eventually today put together a lighting system, and you'll be able to control it. Go up, down, turn it off, set policies, pretty cool stuff. So what is a PoE lighting? How is this thing even connected? Talk about it a long time ago, we'll say it again. You have a PSE, a device that gives you power, so you don't have to get shocked or anything like that. And you get low voltage to a device, like an IoT device, that connects to a light bulb. Right here, we're going to go over 4 different installs of a PoE lighting system. These are the rules of how you can actually bid a project or spec a project, or how you actually can control a project. The inspeXtor platform is a software, so we don't have to talk about that now, but there's a software, a GUI involved, where you actually will control your lights. But physically, there's a PoE switch. This could be a Cisco 3850 and 9300, something that plugs into a high voltage and give you a bunch of ports that you can plug a low voltage cable into it and go to our nodes, and then you can actually control devices or control lighting. What we talk about here on the left is, for example, if you want an integrated fixture, if a client requires a fixture that our technology is inside, you have an internal node inside, and all you get is a fixture with a category cable on top of it. You take the cable that's on the ceiling, plug it in, mount it, and all of a sudden you have a PoE lighting. You can connect the wall switch next to it. So if you have an install or a room where you have multiple fixtures and they require only one port, you can have as many fixtures as you want. As long as you connect the wall switch to the nearest fixture, you can control that room. In the second part, what if you have small downlights? How can this whole thing fit in it? It won't. So what we do is you come out of the PoE switch, you go to the node, and then from there you'll be able to go to a PoE or a power splitter. We're going to go over that in details, but the idea is you're going to come out of some sort of node that goes into a power splitter that splits the power up to 4, and you'll go to 2 external fixtures. So if you have corridor, Pear Village has L18, which is a small downlight that goes down a hallway or a corridor, you're going to have multiple of these, which we call a node, install them in the ceiling, come out of there, go into a PoE splitter or a power splitter, and then use a patch cord and come out of here and go to every single PoE light. The third part is if you have more than just 2 fixtures. What if I want to connect 4 fixtures? I come out of the same port, another port, I go to a PoE node. Now all of a sudden I go from here to a power splitter, come out and go to 2, and then I come out again and I go to another 2. Some of you might ask, what's the difference between this and this? Why can't you do just 4 lights all the time? Why can't I just never use 2 lights? I'm saving on the port. The answer is you're limited to the power. Not all the lights are equal. You might have a light that's 20 watt. The limit is 48 watt inside the fixture. 60 watt comes out of the port, and 48 is what you can deliver. So when you're doing a job, or where you're actually speccing and putting bill of materials, you got to always keep in mind how much budget or how much power I have inside my device. I get this question a lot. Can I do 49? No, you can't. Where you're ETL certified to do 48. You can do anything below 48. You can't just do 49. You can't do 50. The peripheral devices, they don't consume any power. So your 48 is to the light. And that's another thing that we also get asked. Do I account for my peripherals? If I have a wall switch, how much is that wattage? The reason why we're saying we're getting 60 and we're only delivering 48 is we're leaving some juice for this device to run, and we're leaving some for these external devices to run. So as far as the power concerned, you get power and data at the same time. Well, what happens if I have a simple install like this, where I have 4 downlights, and I only want 3 on one point? I don't want 4. No problem. You go to the software and you tell it that you have 3 devices based on the power, and it'll recognize that, and then you can run through it. This allows the facility, if they have enough power sitting here, that they'll be able to run more lights later in the future. Let's say they had a corridor and they only run 4 lights and they're only 10 watt each. I have 40 watt being consumed, and I have another potential 8 watt that I could run down the road when they renovate or they remodel. You can use that as your, from any of you that's doing sales, you can say that you still have power for your next move if you want to renovate. One of the things that we're doing today, and like Vince said, things that we can do today we'll talk about, and I'll just touch on things that we're on the pipeline and where we're going to be actually performing, is we're going to be able to offer USB inside a node. So you'll be able to have power coming in. Not only we control lights, but I'll have USB. And I can run that USB down to the wall where I can charge devices like your phone. Maybe I could put a charger on there. What we're seeing is not everybody takes advantage of the entire power that's being sent out of the PoE switch. And we're trying to make sure that we can use it, especially now going to 90 watt and the ability to control to actually maneuver 90 watts worth of power. There's not enough lights in an area where you can actually need 90 watts inside one fixture. So we know there are going to be budgets, there are going to be a lot of wattage inside our device, and we want to actually distribute that and make more use case out of it. What you also will be able to see is we have another install that's called a slave master. If you have two fixtures that are running pretty much the same wattage, like a 2x2, and that's typical where you have a bunch of 2x2s on either a room like this with a lower ceiling, or you have a corridor where you have a bunch of 2x2s or 2x4s. If they're in the same wattage, you can actually use a slave master scenario where you would come out of the PoE switch, go into one fixture, and the fixture will come ready with one RG45 saying PoE in. You plug that cable in, and you take a patch cord and you go from the same master to a slave. What can I do with that? How is that important? One is you're using the full power. You're not putting all that power in one fixture. You're using two fixtures. Can I control two fixtures separately? In some cases you can, in some cases you can't. If you're driving it from two separate drivers, you can. Most likely, we suggest not to do that. I'll tell you why, is because nobody wants to control every single fixture. Today, in most of our houses, nobody controls a single light bulb at a time. Usually you have 4 or 3 or 6 light bulbs at a time in a room, and you're able to control it. So we don't want to make it too difficult where we can tell the customer, yeah, you can control every one of them. In most cases, they're not going to want that. If they have a room, they have more than one light, they actually would have more than 2, and they'll be able to control all of them at once. From a sales perspective, it's a good thing to say. From a control perspective, it just makes it harder for you guys who's going to commission, find out that to do this, you're going to have to do an extra step. And there may be a use case, there might not be a use case for it. Now, another question sometimes that pops up, can I use only the slave without a master? No. You need one. You can have one, no problem. You can't have the B fixture or a slave fixture without a master. What's the ability that I get with one fixture, not the other? Is the ability to control 2 of them together or 2 of them separately? Now, we talked about wall switches. What we're going to address now is the sensors. What does our sensors do? What's the capability? And how do I actually install these things? Our PoE sensors, we have 2 models today. One model will give you the PIR motion. That means when someone comes into the room, the motion will trigger. Whether or not there's an action for it, I want the light to turn on, off at a certain level. That'll happen for a particular time. It'll also give you the temperature that's in that ceiling. And it gives you the aggregated temperature. So a lot of times I get the question, how is that important? Why do I need to know the temperature of the light? You're not actually capturing the temperature of the light. The sensor is on the side of the light. You're capturing the ceiling temperature. This is for the ability to integrate with other devices, like a thermostat. If a sensor measures a specific temperature and your thermostat measures a different temperature, there might be a discrepancy. Maybe a window open, a door open, you need to cool, go up or down in the HVAC, turn the air on or turn the heat on. It's an add-on. It's not part of the lighting, but yet you'll get ability to measure temperature and you'll get the ability to use it. There's 2 technologies inside the sensor itself. There's a PIR, passive infrared, and an IR, and a microwave, what we call an RF. The RF technology doesn't need to be visible. We can have a sensor that's inside the fixture, yet not visible to the client, and it will still trigger. It's a bit difficult to spec that sensor. The reason why is because IR sensors or RF sensors would actually penetrate through sheetrock. So you got to be careful when you're doing a spec or we're doing a job and you spec a microwave sensor in the middle or on the side and it penetrates to the next door office if you're doing an office environment. You don't want somebody walking next door and it turns on both lights. The coverage area is pretty wide, about 16 feet diameter. So 16 feet diameter, if you place it in the middle, you pretty much covers more than one room. Typical rooms are 10 by 10, 13 by 10. You're going to cover outside of that. So speccing that particular microwave sensor might be a little tricky. Ask questions, we'll be able to help you. PIRs are pretty easy. You got an 8-foot diameter of coverage. That's pretty typical. You walk in front of it, it triggers. It does not penetrate through walls, does not penetrate through anything, so you're okay doing that. When you do an RF, the only thing that blocks that radiation is a metal. In the US, there's no metal between walls. So in the US environment, it's very tricky to actually place them properly. Usually we would suggest to place them in an area where you have a large conference room that's more than 16 by 16. Yet you don't want the sensor, but you want people to walk in and the light turns on and it stays on because it has that motion. One other thing about PIRs, and you'll get that in the field, that sometimes if the person is staying still, usually on a computer, people don't tend to move, or maybe they'll sleep in. They won't move their head, they won't move their hand or anything like that, and they'll just stay quiet. PIRs won't recognize that. Sensors can't recognize, or PIR's technology can't recognize motion if it's not moving. The technology itself works on heat and radiation. When your body moves from one single sphere or one single place to another, you create that delta T. You create that movement of heat. And that's what a PIR picks up and says, okay, a body moves. Now I got to tell the node, and the node tells the light, and that's how it happens. IRs will be able to actually pick frequency of your hand. You can pick someone on the phone talking or moving their hand. However, it's a lot more sensitive and it's harder to maneuver. So you'll be able to calibrate in the field if you have to. There's two ways you can install a sensor. It either comes with the fixture, you don't have to do anything. It's already in the fixture, you just plug the fixture in and it recognizes that. Or you physically have to mount it, and once we go to showroom, you'll be able to see what it looks like. It goes into a 1-inch hole, so you drill a 1-inch hole, you put it in, and then you plug an RJ45 cable into it, or if it does, some of our product actually have a 10-foot lead today, 10-foot lead of an RJ45 that you'll be able to pull to your node and plug it in to the control side.